बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यश्छन्दसा मृषभो विश्वरूपः छन्दोभ्योऽध्यमृतात् सम्बभूव समेन्द्रो मेधया आस्पृणोतु अमृतस्य देवधारणो भूयासं शरीरं मे विचर्षणं जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरिविश्रुवं ब्रह्मणः कोशोऽसि मेधया पिहितः श्रुतं मे गोपाय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिवा कीर्तिः पृष्ठं गिरेरिव ऊर्ध्वपवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वमितमस्मि द्रविणगुंसवर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षितः इतीर्थशङ्कोर्वेदानुवचनम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः आप्यायन्तु मम अङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुः श्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्यां मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्तु अनिराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्माः ते मयि सन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः वाङ् मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्म एधि वेदस्य मानि ईस्थः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेनादितेन अहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रं नो अपि वातय मनः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यो ब्रह्मानं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तं ह देवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तं तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यानस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि। ॐ विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यं निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिरिवोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यत्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्र्यचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यभिमः योगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। उदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये यस्यैव स्फुरणं सदात्मकम् असत्कल्पार्थकं भासते साक्षात् तत्त्वमसीति वेदवचसा यो बोधयत्याश्रितान् यत्साक्षात् करणाद् भवेन्न पुनरावृत्तिर्भवाम्भोनिधौ तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नानाच्छिद्रघटोदरस्थितमहादीपप्रभाभास्वरं ज्ञानं यस्य तु चक्षुरादिकर्णद्वारा बहिस्पन्दते जानामीति तमेव भान्तमनुभात्येतत्समस्तं जगत् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये देहं प्राणमपीन्द्रियानपि चलां बुद्धिं च शून्यं विदुः स्त्रीबालान्दजडोपमास्त्वहमिति भ्रान्ताभृतं वादिनः मायाशक्तिविलासकल्पितमहा व्यामोहसंहारिणे तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये। So in doing the revision of the 4 verses that we are presently involved in, we saw the first sutra, which we expanded to some general ideas about the sutra, not just the technical analysis of the sutra. And we probably will keep the same style, but not spend as much time as we did on Sutra number 1. And so the essence of the first sutra was, the first sutra is actually a preamble to the main body of the Brahma Sutra. Preamble in the sense, this is what's called in Sanskrit Udbodhghata. So Udbodhghata means to put the context of the teaching. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita also, the first chapter is just Upodghata, which points out the context within which Arjuna had come up with a question on what's going on in my life. So far I'm just acting the best way I can, but now I'm reaching an impasse where I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing, and I don't know what to do, and I need some advice. And so setting up the context for that was the first chapter, and then the real teaching begins in the second chapter, or marked on verse number 11, as you know. Similarly, here also the first sutra is setting up the context. This teaching does not start until the second verse, which we will start today. So in the first verse, as you know, the context that it is setting up is, who should be studying this? And because it would be a time wasted if you are not prepared to learn the way it should be learned. You're not qualified. You are still a child, spiritual child, so to speak. And this is what we see. People are busy and they are just doing things, and you tell them, hey, there's a Vedanta class going on. Are you interested? He says, no, not right now. They don't know what Vedanta is, how it can help them. And it's not a matter of waiting until the end of the life to learn it. You have to do it during the life itself. They don't know that, which is okay. This is the way Ishvara has made everybody. It takes a while. And so therefore, they don't have this desire. And so this whole teaching will not be useful to them, and don't do it. In fact, it is recommended that you stay away from people that are not interested in doing so. But if you are interested and you can develop a certain sustained sense of inquiry, this is interesting, and I need to do more than interesting. This is important, and I need to do this. Then a couple of things happen. This is what we were summarizing in the last class. So one is called, in Hindi, called jhalak. Jhalak means you get a definite idea that this is true. So as I was telling you, I got this jhalak when I first listened to Swami Chinmayananji in 1973, June, the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And I said, oh my God, this is incredible. It is called jhalak. Jhalak means it's sort of like a quick glance. Here, Swami Maheshanji had given a very beautiful example, really, I think, of the jhalak. What he said was that suppose you go to a brand new place, like you're traveling, and you reach there in the night, and you are checked into a hotel, and this is a brand new city, you've never been here before. When I used to travel on business, that would happen to me quite often. And so you would be taken into some hotel, and then you check yourself into the room, and it's all dark. And there's nothing, you don't know where the hotel is. Is it in the middle of a jungle, or is it a urban area? You don't know that. So he says you're looking outside of the window and you're not able to tell whether it's a jungle or it's a bunch of trees, or is it a well-paved area. This is the example that he gave. And then all of a sudden there is lightning in the sky. And the lightning quickly reveals to you what the landscape looks like. And within, lightning is very bright. The light emanated by lightning is just amazing. It's like a daylight, just for a split second. And all in that split second, you can tell one way or the other. You can tell this is on the outskirts of it. There is nothing. This is the end of it, and the rest of it is just jungle, just trees and so on. This much you can tell. And then the lightning is over, it becomes dark again. But having done so, will you now forget that this is not an urban area? Your eyes can be open and it's all dark, but you know it from the jhalak that this is exactly how it is. Then Swami Maheshananji says that you wait for sustained light in the morning to look at the details of it. You got an overall sense of what it is, just in a split second. But then afterwards, in order for you to have continuous experience of what it looks like with all of the details as to how many trees there are, what kind of trees there are, is it a dense area, is it all of those kinds of details, you'd have to wait for the morning. And if you're really anxious, then you can, as soon as you get up in the morning, you look out and say, yes, that's exactly what I saw last night. So something like this happens. So if one is, for whatever reasons, however it happens in life, you get inclined to look into the truth of what is going on. Where is my happiness? What do I have to do? What am I doing in my... This is exactly what happened to me. I couldn't formulate my questions as well as I'm trying to do that now, but nevertheless, I was somewhat lost and inquiring. And then I got this jhalak from Swami Chinmayananji. And then, obviously, I had not really studied the matter, so it didn't make a complete, detailed sense to me. But that's all I needed. That's all I needed. My direction was saying... So what happened was that when I listened to Swamiji over the next 2-3 days, it was a 1-week jnana yajna, but out of that, just the first 2-3 days, the first couple of days, first day or so, I was just sort of looking at to say, what is the subject matter, what am I, what's happening, the style of Swamiji's talking, all of that was just introduction. But then after the third day or so, when the vision of the self was given to me through the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, I said, this is just amazing. This is what I want. Because my mind became still, like I had not felt that before. Usually I would feel happy if I just did something and accomplished something. But here, without doing anything, without accomplishing anything, I was stunned, and it was a very beautiful, quiet fullness in me that I'll never forget. So I said, this is what I want to do. But how to sustain it, while you are acting in life and so on, took me a long time. It's still taking me. So it's just like the morning when you have the opportunity to sustain the jhalak. Now then, I'm spending some time on this just to revise the last point that we had made in the last class. That the second part is that there is a nishthurata. And I think one of the students, Zarina, had asked me a question about that. Please explain what nishthurata is. So, and I had explained it a little bit, but just to complete that whole thing. So there are two things involved. One is jhalak and one is nishthurata. These are both Hindi words. Jhalak I've already explained. Nishthurata means difficulty of getting. It's almost like heartlessness. Why is it so difficult? It shouldn't be. So nishthurata, and I gave the example that if there is a couple that would just got married and they wanted to really have a child and they're not able to have a child, but their desire to have a child is sustained. So they look at these days when you see some of the couples who are not able to have a natural childbirth, they goes into all kinds of artificial means, and those are all possible. And so they are very committed, and it's very difficult to find the right thing. So you can, Swami Maheshanji made this point, you can visualize a child and you can say, hey child, you have nishthurata towards us. Don't you have any love? We want you. Why are you not coming? We don't understand that. So this nishthurata is also a blessing. This is the point. We should be seen as a blessing, because supposing you are, this is what happens in the modern day couples. They'll say, when they get married, they'll say, they always test each other, I guess. You do want to have children, don't you? So they'll say, yeah, we don't have. So supposing one of them says, it's okay if we have a child or not, but it's all right. The main thing is marriage, not the child. And so after a while, when the child is not coming, that spouse can say, it's okay, it doesn't matter, let's forget about it. But if they both want it, then nishthurata, heartlessness, almost like a mild form of cruelty, if you may, is important. And so, tatha athato brahma jigyasa. So we should really relate to the first one. Athato Brahma Jigyasa. So here Swami Maheshananji points out that, listen, Vyasacharya, who's the avatar of Vishnu, could have begun with saying, I am going to now tell you about Brahma Sutra. What is the Vedanta Sutra is all about. He can just say, Vadishyami, I will tell you. He didn't say that. He'll say, Athato Brahma Jigyasa. And in the word Jigyasa, both Jhalak and Nishthurata is embedded. Means that, I can just tell you about my life, because after that event in 1973, my life changed. All the priorities changed. I can tell you that with a personal, I'm not exaggerating. Really, if you talk to my wife, she is unhappy that from a normal person I've become a kind of like a household sannyasi. It must not be pleasant for her, for the other family, but I'm really blessed to have a wife like that. But my priorities changed. And I continued to work, but not with the same working. I would come home at 6 o'clock, that's it. I'm not going to stay there. If you wanted to become a general manager or a vice president, you have to put extra effort. I didn't do any of that. I would come home and then study some more. So because I was anxious to find out how can I really turn that jhalak into something which is sustained. And so the whole life has been spent in doing that. So this is what is called jigyasa. And so this is the first verse. Okay, so with that, I think the first verse is now finished, and so here the end point here is Jivan Mukti. Jivan Mukti means that you feel free even though you are living like a limited being. You have a clear experience of immortality, even though you are associated with a mortal body. This is what Jivan Mukti is. And that is the real aim of life. This is where it is all meant for. And then you are free. Otherwise, you have to take another birth and go through the whole process all over again. Anyway, so that's that. All right, now the teaching begins with the second verse. So let's start there. So, as you know, the second verse is Janmadyasya Yataha. So here, the second verse and the third verse should be seen from this important sentence that you should remember. And that sentence is Lakshana Pramanabhyam Artha Siddhihi. Lakshana Pramanabhyam Artha Siddhihi. So Artha Siddhihi means the establishment of the truth of something in you. There are things that are true, but you and I may not know it. But for us to know the truth of something, two things are required: Lakshana and Pramana. So this is an important sentence that we should really take it to heart. Lakshana Pramana Bhyam Artha Siddhihi. Lakshana, what is Lakshana? So let's look at each word. Lakshana means something that uniquely defines something. Something that you're trying to see, to establish, to accomplish, whatever it is. That's the end result. Artha Siddhihi means the accomplishment of the result. So what does Lakshana mean? Lakshana means something which uniquely defines that thing. Because unless the Lakshana is known, you don't know even if you see it. See, even if you see it, you don't know. I think Swami Paramarthananda had given this beautiful example. I'll remember that so well. He says, supposing you take a 1-year-old child and take the child outside in the dark night when there is a very full moon, bright moon, and it doesn't be full moon, any bright moon. And you tell the child, hey, look at the moon. So now remember, the child does not know the word moon. The child doesn't know many of the words. So this is exactly what we are going through with our new granddaughter these days. I'm trying very hard. I've taken on a responsibility for teaching her namaste. So she's sitting there like this and something like this, and we say, Sanya, do namaste. And she looks at you and she's kind of not sure exactly what you mean. What do you mean by Sanya? And she's accomplishing, she's beginning to understand some words, but we don't know whether because she cannot tell us. But anyway, doesn't matter. What we always do is, Sanya, do namaste. And I think we're making some progress, because her hands seem to come together. They don't come like this, but they sort of come together when we do this. And I'm hoping in the next month or so we will have her learn how to do namaste. Similarly, she doesn't know any words. If I take her outside and say, Sanya, look at the moon, she'll look around and say, even to say look at it, she doesn't know. But supposing you say look at it, supposing after 2-3 months she knows exactly look, she'll say look at the moon. So she doesn't know what moon is. So you may have to point out and say this bright, not all the stars around it, all the city lights and so on, but look at this beautiful thing in the dark sky. That one is called a moon, not anything else. So this is what is called Lakshana, because you have now uniquely distinguished this object called moon that you want the child to look at. It's called Lakshana. So similarly, I gave you the example that last week I gave you the example that supposing you say, I want to go to San Jose. And so there are many San Jose's. There's one in Costa Rica. There may be others. There's one in California. If you don't know, you can end up at the wrong place, like we did in Auckland and Oakland. So similarly, you can say, this house belongs to such and such. And you already know who such and such is. Then you have a unique identification for their house. That is called Lakshana. So there is a Sanskrit definition for that, which I don't remember exactly. So it means that all of the gunas are not there in anything else, only in this object. Then it is called Lakshana. So now the question is, this is Brahma Sutra, and the main topic that I want to accomplish, the main vastu that I want to accomplish is Brahman. Why do I want to accomplish it? Because Brahman is the Swarupa of Ishvara, and that is timeless, immortal, and happy. And I want that. So the question is, this is a general description. It is not specific enough. It's like saying moon, the word moon, but you don't know which of the various things that you are looking at is the moon. So now a Lakshana has to be defined. The second sutra, Janmadyasya Yataha, is meant to define the Lakshana of Brahman. Okay, so that's one of the two things in that sentence, Lakshana Pramana Bhyam. Then, supposing you say Lakshana, but now the question is, how do I recognize it? You have already told me exactly what this thing is. This is like supposing you say such and such is house. So you say, okay, I want to, supposing somebody wants to visit me and say, I want Vijay Kapoor's house. So you write down the address 28615, etc., and so on. So now you know exactly, you can tell the GPS, I want to visit this particular home. But then how do you get there? That's another thing. This is called pramana. So the pramana is the proof, the sadhana for accomplishing the lakshana. That pramana is given in the third verse. Shastra Yonitvat, sutra number 3. Shastra Yonitvat. Janmadyasya Yataha is the pramana, and Shastra Yonitvat is the, I'm saying the opposite. Janmadyasya is Lakshana, and Shastra Yonitvat is the pramana. This is how the teaching starts. Because until I know the Lakshana of Brahman, I cannot even begin to accomplish it. I'll be just flailing. I don't know which house is this. Okay. So now let's go to the details of verse number 2. So it says, Janmadi Asya Yataha. He says, because the Brahma is the Karanam, is the cause of the birth, sustenance, and the dissolution of this entire cosmos. Lakshana. There is nothing else that has these characteristics. There are things in the cosmos. You can say there is a Lakshana for sun, for the earth, for the various stars, the various bodies, the moon, and so on. But the Lakshana of one, where all of these things, everything in the cosmos, including you and I, including my status as a human being, everything is born from which, sustained by which, and dissolves into which is Brahman. Because this is the Lakshana of Brahman. There is nothing, there is no other vastu in the whole possibility of the creation where that thing has this Lakshana. So therefore, this is a true Lakshana, a truly unique set of characteristics which no one else has. That is Brahman. So this is how the Lakshana is defined. So now let's look at the Lakshana and also what it means and what the implications are. Okay, one thing to appreciate is, which is to be kept in mind as we study the Brahma Sutra, is that the Brahma Sutra, Sutrani, all the sutras, are not the brainchild of Vyasacharya. We have made that point before, but I just want to, in the revision, I just want to highlight the really important things that should stick in our minds. Okay? And that is that Brahma Sutra, even though it is composed by Vyasacharya, Veda Vyasa, it is not an invention of Vyasacharya. Instead, it is an explanation of the Shruti Vakyas, the Upanishads, the Vedic Vedanta. So this can also be called Vedanta Sutras. This is not Vyasa Sutra, this is Vedanta Sutra. So, what it means is, so this has to be understood because in almost all other schools of thought, it is the invention of some people, some human being. This is called Paurusheya. So you have Sankhya, Yoga, and Vaisheshika, Nayayika, Bauddhas. All of these are Paurusheya. They are invented. I'm not saying composed, because everybody is composing it. Even Vyasacharya is also composing it. But they are the brain waves of some person. Not so the Brahma Sutra. In Brahma Sutra, it is the very original knowledge which has been handed down by Ishvara himself. And all Veda Vyasa is doing is just making it clear. That's all. It is not authored by, it is, even though it is composed by Veda Vyasa, but the authorship goes to Ishvara. This is the point. Therefore, at every part of this Brahma Sutra, the reference is given as to where this Lakshana is given in the Upanishad. Janmadhyasya yataha, so Srishti Sthiti Laya Karana. Where is it? Is it something that Vedavyasa came up with? No. You can look at it in various Upanishads, and the most explicit reference to that is in the Taittiriya Upanishad, where it says, Yato va imani bhutani jayante yat pratyam avishanti. All that phenomena of the Lakshana comes from the Upanishad here, Taittiriya Upanishad and other Upanishads also. Okay? So this is one important point to see. Alright, now we begin to examine this phenomena a little bit. These three. So, one minor objection is not an objection, but a question from a Purva Paksha is, why are you saying Shrishti first? Shrishti means the beginning, Sthiti second, and Laya the third, because didn't you say that there is no real, you are the ones, they say, Vedantins say, that there is no real creation. It is a cyclical thing that has been going on timelessly. If that is the case, why don't you start with Sthiti Laya Srishti or Laya Srishti Sthiti? Why are you beginning at the beginning? That means that the beginning must have something special. So the answer that, and so all this is actually explained, taken up and explained by Bhashyakara, by Adi Shankara. In his Bhashya, he says, no. Don't think about it. This is not significant, because this is the way human beings think. You are right. It can begin anywhere, and there is no, this is like an ornament that is born out of the gold and sustained by the gold and goes back and again reborn again. So you can say, why are you starting with the birth of the ornament? Well, because that's how we think. That's all. There's no other reason for it. It's not that the Srishti is superior to the Sthiti or anything. In fact, it's interesting, and I think that comes in the next point also. Swami Dayananji used to make this point. He says, this thing about Shiva, Vishnu and Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. And so Brahmaji is the form of Ishvara in the creation, and Vishnu is the sthiti, the keeping things going, and Rudra or Shiva is the one that is responsible for the destruction, which is not completely accurate, but it is close enough. So he used to make a point. He says, in fact, this, I tell you what, let's wait let me postpone talking about this until the next point, and then it will make more sense. So I apologize. I shouldn't have really brought that up. But let me just wait for a couple of minutes and explain the next point. Then I will complete this thought about Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Okay. So the next point is, this is an important question from, these are not objections, but these are doubts and questions that people have about the Janmadhyasya Yataha. Okay? So the next question is, we all know that creation consists of two main segments. One is the intelligence of the Creator, and the other one is the material from which the creation is made. This is what we see everywhere, that there are two things involved. There is some intelligence, some brain understanding of this is what I want to create, and then you get the right material to create, and now the creation is accomplished. Given that background, are you talking about this Janmadhyasya Yataha as the intelligence behind the creation, or the material behind the creation, or both? Can you please clarify? So when you say that Brahman is the creator of the whole world, do you mean that he's the creator only? So before we answer that point, now I can take up the previous one, which is, Swami Dayanand used to say that there are people, there are human beings that may be good for creation, but they cannot sustain the creation. Typical example of that is very sad actually in some way to look at it, is that you have a young woman and a young man who create a child because of their sexual passion. They created a child, but they are not ready to take care of the child. Very common, you see this in the world, and they either have to give up the child, or their own life changes. Sometimes they have depression, they don't know what I've done, and so you are incapable of really sustaining it. Ishvara is not like that. Ishvara has made sure that anything which is created is also sustained. So Swami Dayanand used to say, Ishvara is the world's best babysitter. Takes care of it. So anyway, so that was the point that we talked about, the Srishti and Sthiti. Now let's go to the second point that this was raised, which is this the intelligence behind the creation, or is it the material behind the creation? So to make that point, it should be obvious to us, it cannot be just the intelligence behind the creation. Because what about the sthiti and the laya? Therefore, it is primarily the upadana karanam. It is the material cause. Brahman is the upadana karanam, is the principal one. There is just an intermediate step, so we have another step to go. But right now, it is really not the... If you were to choose between Nimitta Karanam, which is the intelligence behind the creation, and Upadana Karanam, which is the material behind the creation, then the sutra number 2 is biased towards the Upadana Karanam, not the Nimitta Karanam. Why? For obvious reason that in the Nimitta Karanam, it is like an engineer who's really thinking about making some, this is the R&D part of a company, who's thinking about making some new device. They don't know about the materials, and somebody else will take care of it. I am just writing software. That's all I'm doing. So no, that is not the case, because here all three are involved, therefore it must be Upadana Karana. So are you saying that that Ishvara is only the Upadana Karanam, not Nimitta Karanam? If that's the case, then who is the Nimitta Karanam? Which one does the sutra number 2 represent? There it is a very important point. This is to please understand this. Again, I am just revising you. We have already gone through this before. That in a limited creation, there is a possibility of the Nimitta Karanam and the Upadana Karanam to be different from each other. In a limited creation. Limited creation means our worldly creation. So the designer for this Android phone, if this is sold and you have to also take care of the designer, then I don't want it, because that's a different situation. All I want is the material, not the designer. And so in the limited world, there is the normal division of a Nimitta Karanam and an Upadana Karanam. But if it is a reference to the infinite creator and the infinite creation, you look at the purity of the thought, the very structure of thinking, the very mathematical purity. Just look at this. If it is infinity, you cannot separate them. Why can't we separate them in infinity? Because there is no longer infinity. No longer infinity. It's all mixed together. The Upadana Karanam and the Nimitta Karanam are just the same person, exactly like the dream that we have every night. Various dreams. I am really amazed at how real, and also I find I compliment the very existence of the dream, because it is so detailed. I don't know how these ideas where these ideas come from. They are they're so real, and they fool. And sometimes I laugh at it when I get up and says, my God, how did those things, I didn't know that I was capable of thinking and creating all these situations. Happens. So in the dream, you cannot say the material is different from the creation, because the intelligence, this is what I'm saying, the intelligence of the dream, how it comes about, it's not just like a foolish kind of a thing. You have, where was it just the other, yeah, I remember this There's one dream where I'm sitting on a bench, and next to me is my mother, who's no longer there. She's passed away. And so these are all mixed in. So my mother-in-law, who's still with us, she does a lot of knitting. She creates a lot of woolen things for people and so on. She's very fond of knitting, and it's a great thing. Now, so in this dream, my mother was knitting, not my mother-in-law. My mother was knitting. And we're sitting in a bench and we're waiting for a show to start. And there are people who are saying, no, this light should be turned off, that light should be turned on. All this is going on. It's a huge, detailed dream. I got up, I said, where did this come from? It is just amazing. So it comes from the Nimitta Karanam. Here the Atma is the Nimitta Karanam and the material. Material meaning the lights, the darkness, the people, the show starting, all of that is also there. So therefore, just like that, if that is the case, if the setting is an infinite setting, then it is Brahman is both the Upadana Karanam as well as the Nimitta Karanam. So this is the point that is also made here. All right, next point. You say that this is the Lakshana of Brahman. I ask you, there are two types of Lakshanas. One is called Swarupa Lakshana, and the other one is Tatastha Lakshana. Swarupa Lakshana means one which is the real substance of a vastu, of a thing. And I'll give you an example of that in a minute. This is called the real substance of what you're looking for. The other one is called Tatastha Lakshana, which has relevance to some relative definition. Tatastha is a word that comes from tate sthitam. Tate sthitam iti tatastham. Tate means on the edge is called tata. Like for example, supposing you have a river flowing. So on the edge of the river, there is some ground that doesn't move. The river is moving, but next to that is a bank which doesn't move, which is the earth. So you can define the bank as the bank of the river, the dirt area, either by exactly what it is, which is a dirt, and it has some grass and some trees and so on, or you can define it as the one which is next to the river. So it is a relative definition. This is called Tatastha. Tatastha Lakshanam and Swarupa Lakshanam. So these are the two type of lakshanas. An interesting example to see is that suppose, I remember this was pointed out by Swami Dayanandji when he actually came to this area, and he was staying in this area for a while. He got to know this San Francisco airport and the drive and 101 and all of that, and he would come to my home also. And what he noticed was, and it was a very beautiful example, even now you can see this, if you are driving on South San Francisco in the Brisbane area in the 1950s and 60s, I don't know when, long time ago, even before I came to this country, there were a bunch of homes that look alike. These are kind of like cookie cutter homes. And they have some different colors, but many of the colors are repeated. So Swamiji gave this example, very beautiful example. He says, suppose you got down from the airport and you have a visitor from India, some relative or a friend, and as you're driving, you tell them, you see those homes there? I live there. So the person says, my gosh, there are like 50 homes. Which one do you have? So then the person has to think about a reason why how he can point out. He can say, oh, do you see that telephone pole? So yes. The one on the right hand side of that telephone pole, the very next one, is my home. So then the person can say, okay. So here the drishti is toward the telephone pole, and then from there you have a relative definition of the home. And so similarly in the Shastras it says that if there is a crow sitting on a home, you can say the one home where the crow is sitting. It's called Tatastha Lakshanam. But the Tatastha Lakshanam is enough to identify. So the Swarupa Lakshanam is the second step. It doesn't have to be the first step. Somehow you do the Lakshana, and from the Tatastha Lakshana, you can go to the Swarupa Lakshana. Or you can go to the Swarupa Lakshana directly. You don't have to go through the Tatastha Lakshana. Like supposing you are driving, the person doesn't have to say, that one is my home. You keep on driving until you go to the driveway and he says, I'm home, this is my home. Swarupa Lakshana. But suppose there is a occasion for Tatastha Lakshana. Tatastha Lakshana also defines it very well. So given with this background, the question is, when you say Janmadi Yasya Yataha, are you talking about Tatastha Lakshana or Swarupa Lakshana? So I'll let you ponder that for just a second before I answer it. Think about it. Which one do you think it is? It is Tatastha Lakshana. Tatastha Lakshana. Because you are saying Brahman is the one from which the entire creation comes. And then if you think about it, then you can move to the Swarupa Lakshana when you really examine it. Okay. We have about 15 minutes. Let us do a brief meditation on Tatastha Lakshana. And so, it is interesting that really the study of all these texts, including Brahma Sutra and so on, as I've been saying for quite a while now, the real advantage we have is that first we get an introduction to the into the structure of what we are looking for, and then we have to translate that into something which we call, this is my own personal, you can call it experience or my personal view, this seems real to me. This is what needs to be done. So I often say that this is not academic, it is something which is very, very personal. So with that in view, let us look at this Tatastha Lakshana and try to see with respect to myself, as we will see in the meditation. So not a long meditation, but I think we have enough time to go through that. And that will be the end of the class. I still have some more things to take care of on the second verse, but after the meditation we will do that in the next class. So let's do some meditation. I'm going to shut these bright lights on facing on my face. Pratarsmarami Hridi samspuradatmatattvam Satchit sukham paramahamsa gatim turiyam Yat swapna jagara sushuptam avaiti nityam Tat brahma nishkalamaham nacha bhuta sangaha. Following the teaching of the Sutra number 2, Janmadyasya Yataha as the Lakshana for Brahman, and initially the Tatastha Lakshana of Brahman. In this meditation, let us see the truth, the reality of this teaching as it relates to myself. Brahman is the conscious self, the Chaitana Atma. The one and only infinite Chaitana Atma. This is how the same Brahman is my Chaitana Atma, and true for each one of us. What I am describing about myself is the same description for you or for anyone. Because it is one and only infinite Brahman as my conscious being. Chaitana Atma. Now, let us look at the phenomena of my life. The everyday phenomena, which is the same for each of us. The Lakshana for the Atma. Lakshana for I. Atma means I. Atma is the same as Brahman. What is the Lakshana for I? How will you define the uniqueness of I? Let us see that. we can see the Tatastha Lakshana of I as follows. I find my life's experiences as a continuous flow. Much like a river. A river has a stable form, but it is continuously changing stable form. There is a thing called a river, but it is a constant flow. Like that, I find my life's experiences having a definiteness, an appearance of definiteness. It is there, it is there, it is there, much like a river is there. But I can also see a continuous flow. And I can see a continuous flow because I am tatastha. I am watching the flow without myself moving. Like the ground next to the river that is watching the river flow, but itself not flowing. Similarly, the Atma the Lakshana for Atma is Tatastha Lakshana, the one that watches the flow of experiences without itself changing or moving at all. Never. Solid, unmovable. This is how we see the teaching of the second sutra, Janmadyasya Yataha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let me go get my laptop just to save time. We're getting late, so I will chant while I'm bringing it from the other room. Om Rahu Grasta Divankarendu Sadrisho Maya Samachadinat Sanmatra Karanopasamharanato Yo Bhut Sushuktaf Puman Raga Swat Samiti Prabodha Samaye Swat Yapratya Vidyayate Tasmai Shri Guru Vishwam Pashyati Karya Karanataya Swaswami Sambandataha Shishyacharya Tathaiva Pitraputradhyatmana Bhedataha Swapne Jagrati Vaya Esha Purusho Maya Paribhramitaha Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Bhurambhamsya Nalo Nilo Ambar Maharnatho Himamshu Puman Ityabhati Chara Charatmakamidam Yasyaiva Murtyashtakam Nanyat Kinchana Vidyate Vimrishatam Yasmat Parasmat Vibho Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Sarvatmatvamiti Sputikritamidam Yasmitamushminstave Tenasya Shravanat Tadarthamananat Dhyanat Sankirtana Sarvatmatvamahavibhuti Sahitam Syadishwaratvam Swataha Siddhyetat Punarashtradha Parinatam Jaishwaryam Avyahatam Ashubhani Nirachashte Tanoti Shubhasantatim Smriti Matrena Yatpumsam Brahmatan Mangalam Param Ati Kalyana Rupatvat Nitya Kalyana Samshrayat Smartranam Varadatvat Cha Brahmatan Mangalam Viduhu Omkaraschatha Shabdascha Dvavetau Brahmanah Pura Kantham Bhitva Viniryatau Tasman Mangilikau Vubhau Omatha 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 Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you. Good to see you all. We'll see you next week. Okay. Hari Om.